I never thought the worst night of my marriage would begin with a smile. For 13 years, I believed I knew my wife, Emily. We had built a quiet life outside Atlanta, the kind that looked ordinary from the street. 2 cars in the driveway, a mortgage we could afford, weekend dinners, and photographs that made us look happier than most couples I knew. Then Emily started changing. At first, it was small. She began guarding her phone. She would turn the screen away whenever I walked into the room. She started coming home later, saying work had been exhausting. If I asked questions, she accused me of being insecure. I tried not to become the suspicious husband. I trusted her. That was my first mistake. 3 months before everything collapsed, Emily mentioned a man named Ryan. She called him a consultant who had been helping her company with a major project. She talked about him more than I realized at the time. Ryan was confident, wealthy, and apparently loved being the center of attention. He's intense, Emily once told me, laughing. But he gets things done. I remember smiling. I should have listened to the warning in my stomach. One Friday evening, Emily told me she was meeting co-workers for drinks. She kissed my cheek and promised she would not be late. She came home after midnight. Her perfume was different. I noticed it immediately. She walked past me without explanation and went straight upstairs. I said nothing. The next morning, I found a receipt in the pocket of her jacket from an expensive hotel downtown. There were 2 drinks, a steak dinner, and a charge for a room. My hands went cold. I confronted her. She stared at the receipt, then at me. It was a work meeting. A hotel room. She rolled her eyes. You're making this bigger than it is. That sentence stayed with me. Not because it convinced me. Because it told me she had already stopped caring whether I believed her. Over the next few weeks, I quietly gathered the truth. I didn't hire a detective. I didn't follow her. I simply paid attention. Ryan's name appeared repeatedly. Late-night messages. Weekend calls. Deleted conversations. Then one afternoon, I saw them together outside a restaurant. Emily was holding his arm. Ryan leaned close and kissed her. She didn't pull away. I stood across the street, completely still. I thought rage would hit me. It didn't. Something colder happened. Everything suddenly made sense. That evening, Emily came home expecting the usual questions about her day. Instead, I asked, "How long?" She froze. "Excuse me. How long have you been sleeping with Ryan?" Her face changed. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she sighed. "You really want to do this?" I nodded. She admitted enough to confirm what I already knew, but somehow she made it sound like my fault. She said Ryan understood her. He made her feel powerful. He didn't question her decisions. I asked if she was leaving me. She smiled. "I haven't decided." That answer broke something inside me. Because apparently, I was no longer her husband. I was an option. 2 days later, Ryan showed up at our house. Emily was standing behind him. He looked me up and down and laughed. "You're the husband." I didn't answer. He stepped closer. "You need to understand something. She's choosing me now." I looked at Emily. She said nothing. Ryan leaned toward me and whispered, "I'm in charge now." Then he spat directly in my face. For a moment, I heard nothing. No anger. No shouting. Just my own breathing. Ryan expected me to swing. Instead, I wiped my face with the back of my hand. Emily looked almost disappointed. That was when I reached into my pocket for my phone. Ryan smirked. "Calling the police." I looked him straight in the eyes. "No. I made one call. I didn't explain everything. I simply said, I need you 3 here. Now." Ryan laughed again. But 10 minutes later, headlights appeared at the end of the street. Then another vehicle turned the corner. 3 large men stepped out. They weren't strangers. They were the 3 men I trusted most in the world, and each one had heard the truth before stepping onto my property tonight. Ryan suddenly looked less confident. Emily finally stepped forward and asked, "Who did you call?" And for the first time that night, Ryan looked afraid. The three men stopped at the end of the driveway. There was Marcus, my older brother, Daniel, my closest friend since college, and Steve, the man who had helped me rebuild my business after it nearly collapsed years earlier. None of them looked angry. That somehow made Ryan more nervous. Marcus walked toward me first. "You okay?" I nodded. Then he looked at Ryan. "What happened?" Ryan tried to laugh it off. "Nothing happened. This guy is being dramatic." Daniel looked at Emily. "Is that true?" Emily opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Steve noticed the redness on my cheek. "He hit you?" I shook my head. He spat in my face. The atmosphere changed instantly. Ryan took a step backward. "Look, man, this isn't your business." Marcus smiled without humor. "You're standing on his property." Ryan looked at Emily. She finally spoke. "Ryan, maybe you should leave." He stared at her. "You're kidding." She looked uncomfortable. "I said maybe you should go." That was the moment I understood something important. She had chosen Ryan when she thought he was powerful. The second that power disappeared, so did her confidence. Ryan pointed at me. "This isn't over." I stepped forward. "It is for me." He stared at me for several seconds, then walked toward his car. Nobody touched him. Nobody threatened him. He simply left. And somehow, that felt better than revenge. The next morning, I met with an attorney. I showed her everything. The messages. The hotel receipt. The photographs. The financial records. And the timeline of what had happened. She listened carefully and then said something I needed to hear. "You don't need to destroy them. You need to protect yourself." So that's what I did. I changed the locks. Separated our finances. Moved important documents somewhere secure. And I stopped arguing with Emily. That last part confused her more than anything. She expected screaming. She expected tears. She expected me to beg her to stay. Instead, I became quiet. 3 days later, she came into the kitchen while I was making coffee. "Are you really going to throw 13 years away?" I looked at her. "You already did." She started crying. "I made a mistake." "No," I said. "You made a decision. You made it repeatedly." She wiped her eyes. "Ryan doesn't want a relationship with me anymore." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because I finally understood the entire situation. Ryan had never wanted my wife. He wanted the excitement of taking something that belonged to someone else. Once there was nothing left to conquer, he disappeared. Emily had gambled our marriage on a man who treated relationships like trophies. And now she wanted me to rescue her from the consequences. I couldn't. The divorce process was ugly, but it was clean. Ryan tried contacting me twice. I never responded. Emily eventually learned that he had been seeing another woman while he was involved with her. That was when she finally understood what I had understood months earlier. She hadn't traded me for someone better. She had traded stability for an illusion. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized. I moved into a smaller house across town. It wasn't fancy, but it was peaceful. No hidden phones. No late-night excuses. No wondering whether the person sleeping beside me actually wanted to be there. One Saturday morning, I was cleaning out my garage when my phone rang. It was Emily. I almost ignored it. Instead, I answered. She didn't say hello. She simply asked, "Do you ever think about us?" I looked around my new garage. At the boxes. The quiet. The life I had rebuilt. "Yes," I said. There was silence. Then she asked, "Do you ever regret leaving?" I thought about the man spitting in my face. I thought about the hotel receipt. I thought about standing in my own home while another man told me he was in charge. Then I remembered something else. The night those 3 men arrived, I didn't need them to fight for me. I needed them to remind me that I wasn't alone. "No," I finally said. She began crying. I let her. Then I told her the truth. "I don't regret leaving you. I regret how long it took me to realize I had already been left." She didn't answer. Neither did I. I ended the call. That was the last conversation we ever had. People sometimes think revenge means making the other person suffer. I used to think that too. But the best revenge wasn't hurting Ryan. It wasn't humiliating Emily. It wasn't taking anything from either of them. It was refusing to become bitter. They expected me to lose myself when they betrayed me. Instead, I found myself again. And that night, when Ryan stood in my house and declared, "I'm in charge now," he thought he was taking control of my life. He was actually giving it back to me. Because sometimes the moment someone disrespects you is the exact moment you finally learn what you deserve. And sometimes, the strongest response isn't revenge. It's walking away with your dignity intact.